Hi guys, Rob here again with another video, and I am surrounded by snare drums. They're like ganging up on me because I want to talk a little bit about these drums because they're such a focal point of the drum set and of the song that we're playing, and there's so many different characteristics different drums can bring, and it's one of the questions I get asked all the time. And I did a masterclass last Sunday at Dramatic with Tristan and AJ Russell, and that was great fun. Thanks to all who came down to that. And a question I got asked again by one of the attendees was, which is your favourite snare drum? And I don't really have one. You know, firstly, I think we pick the right snare drum for the job. And I know collecting drums and buying drums professionally and semi-professionally is expensive. So, you know, sometimes we buy with our eyes, the price tag, or the fact that we just like the look of it, or our favourite drummer plays it. And also there's this other thing where we should really, I guess, and if we can do that, that's fine. But I think we should also buy with our ears as well, if that makes sense. And I think I've told it quite a few times, a story about Bob Zildjian when he taught me how to pick Sabian cymbals back in the day. And I'm very honoured to have spent time with him, and he was a very lovely and gracious man and was very kind to me, and always used to ask how I was doing when he spoke to Steve Gardner at Assembly Music, who also distributed Sonor drums, Sabian cymbals and Godin guitars for any guitarists out there back in the 90s. Anyway, and it's the same goes with the snare drum. You know, I think like when I was at Dramatic the other day, I put on my socials, you know, a picture of me going, should I buy another snare drum? Should I buy another snare drum? And of course, you know, whether I did or not doesn't matter. But, you know, when I go into somewhere like that, I do my best to go in and say, Tristan, you know my snare drum arsenal. You know what I've got. Is there anything here that you think as a session player I should have in my armory? So he'll go through a few things. And I went in one day and I asked that very question. But I think I also started out saying I needed like a 14 by 6.5 or something like that. Something that is like a Ludwig 402. And if it has to be a Ludwig 402, I'll do that. But if you got anything that's kind of like it, you know, I could save a bit of money or whatever. And he came up with this. Now, I'm going to reach over and get this drum. The name of this drum is a comedy name. I have talked about it before, but there it is. But, you know, like a 402, which is a great snare drum, obviously, you know, is price point is, I don't know, 400, 500, around there somewhere. A new one, probably 6, I don't know. But this was like 180 quid or something and does a similar job. And that gold kind of, what's the name that goes around the band that goes around it, there's nothing special about that. It's just, you know, it's not a hole. Someone thought there's a hole in it, like a Colosseum, Ludwig Colosseum, but no, it's just sprayed that way. I don't think there's anything sort of that sexy about it, really. But this does a great job, and I've used it on loads of recordings. I just used it a couple of weeks ago when I was down at our friend's Electric studio in Paynton, which I'm going back to next week. And there's a new artist they're working with, and I used it on there, and it just sounds like a 402, but I saved myself through 400 quid in the process. Now, this video isn't about scrimping and saving. I'm just saying, you know, this sounded amazing next to a 402. And I thought, you know what, save a little bit of money as I go. But of course, the name is comedy and it's not a 402. But, you know, I'm not looking to buy it just to say I own one. I'm looking to buy something that's going to sound good through a microphone because I'm a professional musician, you know, and that's what I need. So the next time you see sort of, maybe if you pass like a second-hand store or something, and you see a snare in the window or a charity shop, go in and try it out. You might save yourself a little bit of money and get a really good drum. Sometimes they're not very good, obviously, but you have to use your ears. But don't be put off by the price tag or the name sometimes. But this is a great snare drum, and I use that quite often. So, you know, that kind of covers the, oh, should I buy a cheap snare drum? Do I have to buy what all the companies are telling me to buy? No, you don't. You know, definitely not. And let's move off of that to another point, which is like, if we're looking at price point, sometimes just getting a wood shell snare, a 5 or a 6 or 7, doesn't really matter, and then get a steel shell, aluminium shell, then you've got two, you've got a metal and a wood. you know. And of course, then we can go into brass and copper and all the other kind of metals and so on, and same with woods and stuff. But basically, starting out, just having a wood and a metal snare drum is a really good place to start. That's what I did originally. And I can't tell which one I like the most. That's another question, wood or metal. Again, with me, if I'm just playing drums on my own for the day, like practice, I'll sometimes look around and think, oh, I'm going to take that snare drum actually. And it could be any of the ones I've got here, just because I fancy playing that drum. Whereas when I'm on a session, I need to pick the one that sounds right for the track. And when I say that, I mean, it could sound killer in the room as I'm playing it. But the minute we run the track and it's bedded in with the music, you know, the fact that it's wood or metal, and obviously the way it's tuned, and whether I play with a rim shot or I play in the center of the drum, you know, that's going to affect the guitars on the track, any strings on the track, anything in that high-end register, any synth pads and vocals. And you can't just say, this is my snare tuning, man, this is what I do, and expect to get loads of sessions, because people will say, can you detune? Can you tune it up? Can you muffle it? Can you do this, that, and the other? And sometimes they'll bring out the studio snare for you to use because it sounds great, and, you know. So horses for courses. So that answers sort of that. Right, let's just go through a few more of these. What have we got? This is a jazz festival in white marine pearl, which always famously goes slightly yellow or green, as you can see. It's a lovely drum, a jazz festival, 14x5. Great, I got this in America. I think it's got the red. Oh no, it hasn't. I thought it might have had the red muffle, but it's got the white. And I think it's 66, July 21st. Or June or July, I can't really tell with these glasses. 1966, so that's a winner. This is obviously good with brushes, as you can imagine. These don't work too well, these P, whatever they are. I can't remember what these strainers are called, but I'm not going to get all anarchy about it. You can leave that, you know, drop it in the comments and let me know. But yeah, lovely drum, works really well with singers, works well in a jazz scenario. But again, you know, I don't always want to typecast these drums, because if I tune this up and play it with a rim shot, it sounds great as a funky kind of 90s snare sound, you know, like you had on things like Spin Doctor's Two Princes. Do you remember that? Was it Two Princes? Yeah, I think so. That's a lovely drum. So that sometimes gets an airing, and I'm getting attacked by my shining pillow there. Stay, stay. Okay, now this one is the one I use the most, and it's going to be hard to hold up because it's really heavy. This is my DW, which I potentially call the Hitmaker. Did I come up with that? Somebody did anyway. Which is just a great snare drum. This mag throw off thing, this is brilliant. I love that. It works really well compared to the vintage drums. You can see why it's so heavy. Look at the plies in there. I don't even know. People are going to say how much is, I don't know how many plies are in there. Is that 10 or something ridiculous? Or 8, 10? I'm not a drum maker, I'm just a player. But a lovely drum. It's a collector's series. It's pretty much a maple shell, and it's just a killer snare drum, and tunes well up, tunes well down. I know I've talked about it many times on my videos, but this is it. For once, it's actually not in the studio or in transport or in a flight case somewhere. It's actually at home. But this is the drum that appeared on the Grammy-winning records with Laura Pausini, also on Lost Souls with Lorena McKinnitt, and Lorena McKinnitt live at the Royal Albert Hall album, and all of the Susie gigs, all of the hard to say, all of the Lorena gigs since I joined her in 2017 or whenever that was, 2018. And it's just a great drum. I use it all of the time. And it reacts well with brushes. Even though it's by 7, it's quite deep. It reacts well with brushes, with mallets, with my hands. However I'm playing it, you know, whether it be the Bop Works drumsticks that are a bit lighter, or, you know, my Vic Firth 5As or 5Bs, it just does the job, and it's a winner. And I think that's the one that you'll see me, if you look at any of my pictures on social media and any videos here of me recording, I've usually got that snare drum strapped to me, pretty much. So far we've had a Ludwig, a Jug snare drum, and a DW. I have a DW 13x5, which is a killer of a drum, and that actually is in my car at the moment. It's the one I'm using at most of the gigs that I'm doing, and that's just a fantastic drum. Me with my wonky glasses. And someone's messaging me, but I'm not going to get back to you, John, just yet. Right, so next up, is Ludwig Vistalite. It has got a name, hasn't it? These three colours. I can't think what it's called now. A Tivoli drum. So you get red going down. You get red, orange, and yellow. I think this is 1977, 78. Perfect disco time. A bit of a better throw off. Again, that's a Ludwig P something or other. But this works a lot better than the 60s drums. Still a little bit noisy compared to the DW, but those guys have got that mag throw off thing. That's just a winner. And yeah, it's got a muffle in it, but it's got the 70s round one rather than the 60s kind of flat ones, longer ones, well, rectangle shaped ones. This is a great drum. I just recorded with this at Real World a few weeks ago and rim shotted every stroke, and it just sounded brilliant on the track that we were doing. And it was a kind of Cure-esque, if you're going to reference it. It was a bit like the Cure, I guess, that kind of thing. And, you know, one could say, oh, the DW will do it, and it probably would. The 400, you'll see in a minute, I put on, that was good. But there was just something about the resonance of this drum that just really suited the song and just sounded killer. So this is a fun drum to play. Good with brushes, slightly detuned. If you go for that bottom thing where you untune a few of the tuning pegs, screws, it gives you that sort of kind of sound. Which any drum will, I suppose, but what am I trying to say? It's got a certain chesty kind of go when you hit it. Oh, I love drum talk. Go, give us a go or a geesh. So that's that one. That's a winner. That gets used quite a bit, but not as much as it probably should, but that's okay. I always take it to a session and it's always there just in case. This is the drum. These are the drums I collect the most. For some reason, I like student festival, Slingerland student snare drums. This is one in silver sparkle. I've also got one which is in a purpley sparkle and a red one over there. And I might buy another one from Tristan at Drumatic, which is gold, if it hasn't gone. That's the one I was looking at the other day. But these are great. These are all from the 60s. It's only a 6-lugger. 1, 2, 3, yep, just checking. Sometimes you make mistakes. It's only a 6-lugger. And I've taken all the muffles out because when you rim shot them, they tend to ring on a little bit and have a metallic spring sound sometimes. So I've taken them all out, all of them. I've still saved them. Don't worry, drum collectors and enthusiasts. I've saved all the screws and the washers. Everything's safe. It's going to be fine. But these drums are killer. I've got 3 of them. Because it's only 6 lugs, they don't tune as finely as an 8 or a 10 or a 12, obviously. So they're a bit kind of like a runt of a litter, if you like. But there's something about the primal way that they sound with just the 6 tuning screws, you know. When we get a 6-lugger, it's not as versatile for obvious reasons. But there's something about that character that it gives that on the right song, again, could be good. This could be one of the snare drums that I haven't played for a while. I go, bugger it, I'll just take it out and play it, why not? And same with the red one and all the vintage ones. You know, as I say, I've got 3 of them. I thought I had 4, but no, 3 seems to be the number. 4 with the gold one. Tristan, give us a deal. Anyway, so these are cool, great drums. And I remember being at a vintage show once and I said to somebody there, I don't know what to collect. You know, everyone collects this. And they just said, collect something that really you're attached to. It doesn't have to be what we're all doing. Just find something that speaks to you. And that's the drum that speaks to me. For some reason, the Slingerland student. I don't know. If you've got one and you're selling it, let me know. I'm looking for one in the swirl wrap. What's it called? My memory, I can't remember. I'll think of it in a minute. But I've got the my Tama kit, which people think is a Gretsch. My Tama kit from the 60s has got that colour. It's like a swirl finish. I can't think what they call it. It will come to me. But if you've got one of those in silver, I'd love that. That'd be amazing. And finally, for the ones I've got here, and I think it's only the 13x5 I've not got. I used to have like 15 snares, but anyway, this is a classic Ludwig 400 from 1960 something, 67, 68, 69, around there. I had another one, which I took out with Susie on the first tour we ever did, which for Susie fans was the Manta Ray tour. And it got left under the stage in Oxford, the Oxford O2, they called O2, those places. And we didn't know until we got to Coco the next day that it got left behind. So my drum tech, I was actually getting my hair dyed with a red streak in it at the time. And he came up and said, Rob, it's been left behind. And I was like, hey, don't, you know, it is what it is. But inside I was like, oh no, because it was a vintage one. It wasn't a newer one. But you know, anyway, they sorted it out, and you know, on the insurances have got me another one. I got another one from eBay in the States, another 60s one, probably like 2008, 9, something like that. Anyway, and that's what this one is, the one that the other one replaced. So whoever's got that one, you lucky person. But yeah, it's good. It's got the usual pitting in the chrome. It's got, again, that throw off, which is hell to use, but yeah, it's nice. This one's got a Weather King head on it, and an old Rogers snare head at the bottom there, look. So I don't know what year that is, but anyway. But this is great. You know, the snares are a bit older, worn, but again, I don't mind. I'd sooner have an old one than a newer one. Of course, it detunes after 1 or 2 takes, depends how hard you're hitting it. Which again, is it annoying? Yes. And every now and again, the engineer plays it back to listen to the tuning. I hit it and say, right, it's back where it was. So, you know, it's not ideal in a professional, quick working scenario, to be honest. But there's a certain character this drum brings. Again, it's got the baseball bat muffler, and it's a white one. It's not a red one, so it's after 63 or 4 or something like that. I'm sure experts will leave that in the comments. But yeah, this is a great drum. People say bring it, and I do. And I usually take the Jugs snare and the DW, and maybe the 13 DW anyway, which I never would, and the Jugs in this one are of metal. But sometimes this will do it, and sometimes people, engineers and artists will ask for a certain drum because they think that's what their favorite drummer used, or they know that's what their favorite drummer on a record used, and you put it under their song and it sounds nothing like it, you know. And sometimes it's a wood one. Well, that's another thing. Sometimes when people think, oh, it's definitely a wood shell for this one, you know, the engineer or producer will say it's definitely wood, and then you try it and then they go, okay, yeah, put the other one on, whatever the other one would have been. If it was wood, it'd be metal wood. And sometimes you go with a drum you don't expect and you go, God, I never thought that was going to sound so good on this track. But it does, and that's how it goes. So that's my little kind of plethora of snare drums. I'm looking at a gold student festival, a gold Slingland student snare, which Tristan's got. But if anyone has got one of those silver swirl ones, I'm trying to think what that finish is called again. Please leave it in the comments. The minute I press stop, I'll remember what it's called. Satin Flame. If anyone's got like the silver Satin Flame or white Satin Flame, whatever that is, I had one years ago because I toured with a band called Modern English in 1996. They had a massive hit in the 80s with a song called Melt With You. Anyway, I got on the bandwagon in 96 and recorded an album called Everything's Mad. And I did that whole tour, played some great places. Played at First Avenue, which is in Minneapolis, where Purple Rain was, some of the live scenes from Purple Rain were held. Anyway, so that was a good one for me. It's like, boing, excellent. I didn't get to Paisley Park though, so that was annoying. Anyway, I on my travels in Wisconsin, I bought 3 student snares. That's what started my whole love of it. And I sold them all in time just because of money and what have you. But one of them was this satin white swirl one, you know, Satin Flame. So if anyone's got one of those out there, they're looking to sell. Not ridiculous, obviously, but I'll be very, very interested. So there's a few things on the snares, about my snares, but also some things to think about when you're buying your next one. Obviously, you know, I could have copper, brass, all the different variations, and they all bring something different. But, you know, these are the things that I need at the moment. I guess I could buy a wild card brass one, or copper, or something a bit more exotic in the metal snares. And maybe Tristan had some really nice kind of custom made ones there, dramatic snares like in ash and other kind of wood. So maybe there's room for an exotic sort of wild card as well. But generally, this is the kind of general setup I think most drummers go for. And I think someone commented, you know, the one with the most snares wins. I think that must be from some film or something, I don't know, but obviously not snares. But, you know, maybe if you're a collector, that's great. But I also don't like seeing drums sitting around not being played. But, you know, maybe when those royalty checks come in, I'll buy 30 snares. But anyway, we'll see. So I hope that was interesting for you. If you have any of these drums, let me know what you think about them in the comments. Or if you've got any questions about these drums, drop them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed that. I always like going over gear, but hopefully I brought up some things that are interesting that, you know, you might not get from certain places when you talk about how sensible it is to buy certain drums for certain reasons, you know. And certainly the point I made about buy with your ears and not your eyes is sometimes a good thing, even if it looks a bit quirky with the rest of your drums. If it's a great killer snare, I don't care if it's 80 quid, you know, or 800 quid, you know, if you get it for the right reasons. Okay guys, so as ever, thanks for liking, sharing, and obviously being here to watch first. I really appreciate it. Supporting the channel is great. It's building up all the time, and that's because of you guys, so thank you. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, any of my other kits or whatever, again, just drop it in the comments, and I'll do my best to do that for you. So have a groovy day. I'm off to do God knows what, on gigging tonight. Yeah, so have fun, and I shall see you soon. Cheers, bye.